A story about control, desire, and restraint. She sat at her desk, staring at the papers scattered before her. The office was quiet, save for the soft hum of the computers. It was late, and most of her colleagues had gone home hours ago. But she remained, as always, pushing herself to meet deadlines, chasing the next success. Her name was Anna, a woman in her 30s who had built a life that many admired. She had a successful career, a well-maintained home, and the respect of everyone around her. Yet, despite it all, something inside her felt incomplete. It wasn't that she wasn't grateful for everything she had, because she was. Anna had worked hard to climb the ladder in her career, but lately, a feeling she couldn't ignore had started to creep in. It was like a voice in the back of her mind, one that whispered about the things she had pushed aside, desires, dreams, and passions that she had locked away in order to maintain control over her life. Anna had always been someone who thrived on structure. She had an internal compass that guided her choices, from the way she spent her days to how she interacted with people. She prided herself on her self-discipline. She would wake up early, exercise, plan her day meticulously, and work hard without complaint. But recently, her carefully constructed routine had started to feel like a cage. She had no time for the things she used to enjoy, no time to simply be present in the moment. One evening, as she left the office later than usual, she ran into someone unexpected, John. He was new to the company and had a reputation for being charismatic. Anna had seen him a few times, but they hadn't spoken much. He was different from the others, though. There was something about him that made Anna feel both curious and cautious. "Late night?" John asked, his voice warm and easy. Anna smiled, a bit caught off guard.
Yeah, just finishing up some work.
It's been a busy week.
"You should take it easy sometimes. Life isn't all about deadlines, you know," he said, his tone teasing but kind. She laughed softly, unsure how to respond. He was right. But she didn't know how to relax anymore. Everything in her life revolved around keeping control. Her career, her home, even her emotions. She had always believed that if she kept everything in check, she would find peace. But now, standing there, she realized it hadn't worked out quite the way she had imagined. John's gaze lingered for a moment, his eyes bright with an almost unspoken understanding. It was as if he could see through the walls she had built around herself. Anna felt her heart race slightly, but she pushed the feeling aside. She didn't have time for these distractions. She was too focused on the life she had carefully crafted. "Well, I should get going," she said, offering a polite smile before turning to leave. "Maybe we could grab coffee sometime," John suggested, his voice more serious now, but still lighthearted. Anna hesitated, unsure. She was already stretched thin with work, and the last thing she needed was to open herself up to someone new. But there was something in John's presence that made her pause. It wasn't just his friendly demeanor. It was something deeper, something she hadn't felt in a long time. A spark of desire, perhaps, or maybe just the possibility of something more than the life she had been leading. But she couldn't afford to let her guard down. She had always been in control, and she wasn't about to let anyone change that now. So, with a soft smile, she shook her head. "I'm really busy, but thanks. I'll see you around." As she walked away, Anna couldn't help but feel a little tug at her heart. It was as if something inside her had wanted to stay, to explore the connection with John. But she dismissed the thought quickly. There was no room for that kind of thinking in her life. Control, that's what kept everything in order. That's what made her successful. And success was what mattered most. Still, as she got into her car and started driving home, her mind wandered back to that brief encounter with John.
What if she had said yes? What if she allowed herself to step outside the boundaries she had set for herself?
But no, that wasn't who she was. She had worked too hard to let anything slip now. When Anna arrived home, the familiar, quiet comfort of her house greeted her. It was a place where everything had its place, where she could breathe and reset for another busy day. But tonight, it felt different. The emptiness she had been ignoring for so long seemed louder than ever. She walked through the house, turning on lights and preparing for the next day. But nothing felt the same. The routine she had followed for years now felt like an anchor, pulling her down rather than keeping her grounded. As she sat down on the couch, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from a colleague. They were asking for help on a project. Anna quickly typed out a response, agreeing to lend a hand, and then set the phone down. She tried to focus on the quiet of the house, but the feeling of restlessness wouldn't go away. Anna knew something had to change. But what? She had spent so many years building a life that was stable, that was predictable, that was controlled. But now, the cracks were starting to show. She couldn't deny it anymore. She longed for more. But more of what? And could she let go of the control she had clung to for so long? She didn't have the answers yet, but she knew she couldn't keep living in this quiet tension forever. For weeks after her brief encounter with John, Anna tried to keep herself busy. She buried herself in her work, pouring all her energy into the tasks at hand. She told herself that it was just a momentary feeling, something that would pass if she stayed focused. But the restlessness continued to linger in the background, like a shadow she couldn't shake off. Her daily routine had become a series of automatic movements. Wake up early, get ready, head to work, go through the motions, come home, eat dinner, and sleep. There was little room for anything else, and for a while, she convinced herself that this was how things were supposed to be. Control was her anchor, the thing that kept her grounded in a world that was constantly changing. Without it, she feared everything might fall apart. But the more Anna tried to keep everything in check, the more she started to feel a deep emptiness inside. It wasn't the kind of emptiness that could be filled by a long to-do list or a busy day at work. It was something more, something that reached into her soul, making her question the choices she had made. She had worked so hard to build this life, yet something still felt missing. She couldn't ignore it any longer. One evening, after another long day at the office, Anna found herself standing in her kitchen, staring at the untouched dinner she had made for herself. It wasn't the first time she had eaten alone, but tonight it felt different. The silence of her home seemed to echo louder, as if it was amplifying the sense of longing she couldn't escape. She picked up her phone and unlocked it, her fingers hovering over the screen as she thought about calling a friend, or maybe even John. But then she stopped. She couldn't bring herself to reach out. She wasn't sure why, but the idea of letting someone into her life felt overwhelming. She had always kept her distance, afraid that letting anyone get too close would expose her vulnerabilities. She had always prided herself on being independent, strong, and self-sufficient. But now, she wasn't so sure. As she sat down at the table, the phone still in her hand, Anna felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. It wasn't physical tiredness, though. It was something deeper. A kind of emotional fatigue that came from holding everything in, from keeping up the perfect image, from pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. She looked around her kitchen, the soft lighting casting a warm glow over the room. It should have felt comforting, but it didn't. It felt like a cage. Every decision she had made to create this life, this safe, controlled life, now felt like it was trapping her. The career, the house, the routine, it all felt like it had been built to keep her in line, to keep her safe. But in doing so, it had stifled the parts of her that craved freedom, adventure, and connection. What would it be like to let go of control? To allow herself to feel something outside of work and responsibility? The thought terrified her. Yet there was also a strange pull toward it. She had always told herself that she couldn't afford to let her guard down. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to question that belief. The next day, Anna found herself at the office, trying to concentrate on a presentation. Her mind kept drifting back to the thoughts she had been battling for weeks. What if she took a step back from her rigid routine? What if she allowed herself to experience life in a more open way? It wasn't that she wanted to throw everything away. She just wanted to feel something real again. John hadn't been far from her thoughts either. He was always there, lurking in the background of her mind. She hadn't seen him much since their last conversation, but something about him had stuck with her. He wasn't like anyone else she had met. He was carefree, yet grounded. He seemed to embrace life in a way that Anna had forgotten how to do. He had an energy about him that was infectious, and it made Anna realize how far removed she had become from her own joy. Later that day, when Anna found herself walking to her car, she saw him standing by the entrance of the building. He was chatting with a group of colleagues, laughing and enjoying the moment. He looked up and caught her eye, and she felt a spark of recognition between them. He smiled and waved.
Hey, you made it through another day?
He called out, his voice light. Anna smiled back, but this time, there was no hesitation in her response.
Yeah, just barely, she said, her tone matching his. John stepped away from the group and walked over to her.
You doing okay? He asked, his gaze softer now, more concerned. Anna felt something inside her stir. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could let her guard down, even if just a little. She took a deep breath. I don't know, she admitted, the words coming out more easily than she had expected. I've been feeling a little off lately. John raised an eyebrow. Off? How? I don't know. Just tired. Like I'm stuck in a routine that's draining me. Like I've forgotten how to live, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her for a moment, as if weighing her words. Then he nodded, as if he understood something about her that she hadn't even realized yet. I get it.
You've been living for everyone else, haven't you? For your job, your responsibilities.
But what about you? What do you want? Anna blinked. The question hit her harder than she had anticipated. What did she want? She hadn't asked herself that in so long. She had been so focused on doing what was expected of her that she had forgotten what it meant to follow her own desires. To truly live for herself. Before she could respond, John offered her a warm smile. I know it's not easy to break free from what you're used to, but sometimes the only way to really find yourself is to step outside your comfort zone. Anna felt her heart race at his words. It was as though he had given voice to the very thoughts she had been trying to ignore. For the first time in weeks, she felt like there was hope for change. That maybe, just maybe, it was time to take a step towards something different. The drive home that evening felt different. For the first time in a long time, Anna didn't feel the heavy weight of her routine bearing down on her. She still wasn't sure what she was going to do or how she was going to change, but for the first time, she felt like it was possible. She had a long road ahead of her, but now, for the first time in a while, she was ready to walk down it. The days following her conversation with John felt different. Anna had always been someone who carefully considered every decision, but now she found herself reflecting more deeply on the small moments in life. For the first time in years, she allowed herself the space to think beyond the rigid structure of her daily routine. At work, her focus was sharper than it had been in months. She found herself engaging with her colleagues in a more open way, no longer just going through the motions. It wasn't that she was neglecting her responsibilities, but something had shifted within her. She wasn't just working to maintain control anymore. She was working because she wanted to. She wasn't living to please others, but to fulfill her own sense of purpose. She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it happened, but over the next few weeks, Anna began to feel a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. It wasn't about perfection or meeting expectations. It was about finding a balance between responsibility and joy. She had started to let go of the tight grip she had held on control. It wasn't easy, but it felt freeing. She realized that control wasn't something she needed to hold on to all the time. It was about knowing when to let go and trust herself. As she sat in her office one afternoon, Anna glanced at the clock. It was just past 5, and for once, she didn't feel the usual urgency to finish everything. Before heading home, she stood up, stretching her arms above her head. A feeling of lightness washed over her. She didn't have to rush to finish her work or complete every task perfectly. There was time for everything. She smiled to herself, something she hadn't done often in the past. She had learned to slow down, to savor the moments rather than race through them. It wasn't about abandoning her responsibilities, but rather about recognizing that life had more to offer than just deadlines and productivity. She had a newfound appreciation for the small things, like the warmth of a cup of tea in the morning, the sound of birds outside her window, and even the simple pleasure of sitting in silence without any pressure. The phone buzzed on her desk, snapping her back to the present. It was a message from John.
How's your week going?
You still up for that coffee sometime? She looked at the message for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. She had been thinking about John more lately, not just because of his kindness, but because he had opened her eyes to something important, something she had buried under the weight of her responsibilities for so long. The idea of letting someone into her life, of letting herself be vulnerable, no longer seemed so terrifying. It felt natural now. She typed a quick response. I'd love that. How about tomorrow? John's reply came almost immediately.
Sounds perfect. See you then.
Anna felt a rush of excitement as she set her phone down. It wasn't just about meeting him again. It was about taking another step toward the life she wanted. A life where she didn't have to be perfect or in control all the time. A life where she could embrace both her responsibilities and her desires without feeling guilty or afraid. The next day, they met at a small cafe near her office. It was a cozy spot with soft lighting and the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the air. John was already sitting at a table by the window when she arrived. He stood up when he saw her, giving her a warm smile. It felt easy, natural, as if they had known each other for much longer than they actually had. I'm glad you could make it, he said, pulling out a chair for her. I'm glad I did too, Anna replied, smiling as she sat down. They talked about everything and nothing, about work, about life, and even about the small things that made them laugh. For once, Anna didn't feel the pressure to be the perfect, composed version of herself. She could just be. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and she found herself enjoying the simplicity of the moment. John listened to her with a kind of attentiveness that made her feel seen, heard. It wasn't about impressing him or making herself appear flawless. It was about connection. And in that moment, Anna realized that this kind of genuine connection was something she had been craving for a long time. As they finished their coffee, John looked at her, his expression sincere. I'm glad we did this, he said. You seem more relaxed. It's like you've been carrying a lot, but you're starting to let go of it. Anna felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just about her conversation with John. It was about everything she had started to realize in the past few weeks. She had been carrying the weight of her own expectations, trying to control everything around her. But in doing so, she had forgotten how to simply live, how to feel the moments instead of rushing through them. She had been afraid that letting go of control would mean losing everything. But now, she saw it differently. Letting go didn't mean losing. It meant freeing herself from the unnecessary pressure she had placed on her own shoulders. I think I'm starting to understand that, Anna said softly. That it's okay to let go sometimes. That it's okay to feel things, to want things, without overthinking it. John smiled. It's a big step, but it's worth it. As they parted ways that day, Anna walked away with a sense of clarity. It wasn't about completely abandoning control or becoming someone else. It was about balance, about embracing the freedom to live without the constant weight of expectations bearing down on her. She could still be responsible, still be hardworking, but she didn't have to do it all alone. She didn't have to do it in a way that made her feel small or invisible. Later that evening, as Anna sat down at her kitchen table, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. It wasn't just because she had spent the day with someone who understood her in ways she hadn't expected. It was because she had finally allowed herself to take a breath, to enjoy life for what it was, not for what she thought it should be. She knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges. There would be days when the old habits crept in, and she would have to remind herself to let go. But now, she had a new understanding of what it meant to live fully. It wasn't about perfect control. It was about finding joy in the unpredictability, in the moments that couldn't be planned or forced. Anna smiled to herself, knowing that she was on the right path. The path of embracing life, embracing herself, and embracing the things she truly wanted. And for the first time in a long time, she was excited about what lay ahead.